doesn't matter whether you are a corporate that is competing with another corporate. Everybody reaches a new level of efficiency when participating.
The idea is actually that people start collaborating on the blockchain.
Good afternoon and welcome everyone to the Blockchain in Use conference today with the IoT session. We're very happy that we have so many of you joining us today. We had almost 200 registrations. Very happy that we have so much interest in this subject, of course, in blockchain and in what we're doing here in Berlin with blockchain. My name is Stephan. I am the president and founder of BerChain, and BerChain is a non-profit association in Berlin, where we connect and promote the blockchain ecosystem. We're here today, we're presenting this session in collaboration with Berlin Partner for Technology and Business. And we're very excited with the program that we have today for you. If we have a quick look at the agenda, we have the moderation by Professor Dr. Katarina Adam, 3 very exciting use cases, and a panel discussion right afterwards. So stay put and make sure to engage with us as well. And the best way to engage with us today is by using the Q&A button that you should see on the bottom of your screen, where you can ask a question. This question will then pop up for the moderator and the panelists as well. And will be answered towards the end of the session, capacity allowing. Then, without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce the panelists today, and most importantly, Professor Dr. Katarina Adam, who is a professor at HTW Berlin, but also the founder of SIMS and an advisor to many blockchain startups. Professor Adam, I would like to hand over to you to also introduce the rest of the panelists, but perhaps you would first like to share something more about yourself, or first introduce the panelists. I'll leave that up to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me here. I'm very happy, and welcome to all, to the audience. And it is a very interesting topic, and I think we can learn a lot. And as we have seen in at the beginning with the video, with a small video, it is about how to collaborate with each other. And I think this is something which is really on the driver's seat to make collaboration safe, secure, and how can we do this? How can we tackle all these challenges which are popping up? I would not introduce myself in deep, because I think Stephan, you already has done that, and that's fine for today, because the panelists are our stars here on this stage, and I would like to introduce them a little bit in detail. And I'd like to start with Marcus. Marcus Jones he has over 15 years experience in international engineering, both as a founder of successful consulting business and as a manager for projects in Eastern Europe, Africa, and Middle East. Most recently, he led the data science product at Berlin-based Ocean Protocol project, and BerOcean Protocol is a decentralized substrate for data sharing, provenance, and value extraction. You see, I'm start to read. And I think we will learn a lot, because Marcus can or is willing to share his insights about his project or his startup Weeve with us. And I'm very excited to learn more about that. After that, I would like to hand over to Stephan Noller. He's the CEO of Ubirch, and I think he's a serial founder, and he can tell us a lot of things about how digitalization should be conducted, how we move on and things. And I just refer to his CV on LinkedIn. So he is the CEO of Ubirch. And Ubirch is offering security solution for data integrity, which, by the way, I think is of really utmost importance, because we should understand how data security is working, or we have to take this into account, especially what we see right now in times of COVID, where we all sit in front of our laptops. And here I think to create the awareness to really create safe, secured environment. That's a very interesting point, and I'm also very eager to talk with you about this kind of questions which are related to, let's say, cybersecurity and attacks. Beyond that, and that's what we already discussed at the beginning, I also would like to talk to you about trust and human being, because you also, as an author and with your former or with your educational background, you can tell us a little bit more about human being and how they interact with technologies and what does this mean. So I'm very, very excited to learn more from you. Last but not least, first, Carsten. Carsten and I, we know each other since a long time, and Carsten was one of the first guys who told me in detail what I have to learn about blockchain. So we met in New York at a conference, and there he was really so nice and told me, Katarina, you should take this and that into account. And he made some nice drawings and helped me through the process. Thank you so much for this, Carsten. That was a very good way to look into. And as I can see, you are on your way. And with Spherity, you received a very nice, you are the winner of a program. And I think you will also tell us a little bit more about this. So your career in blockchain and what you have done is so amazing. We can learn a lot of things from you. And therefore also very interested to hear more. What are you doing? How are you tackling the collaboration in industry? And that's what we are talking about, Internet of Things. And I think more like industrial Internet of Things. This is what we probably will see here through these talks. That's of utmost importance to understand that, yeah, we can bring some solutions on the table. And right now, I would like to ask you, please allow me to make a small introduction to our topic today. And therefore, I just would like to share my screen with you guys so that I give you an overview what I would like to talk about, that you get a kind of a feeling what this is all about. Let me start with something which might be a little bit crazy, but you know, who likes to see the Star Wars films, the Star Wars movies, you know, it started with a long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. Well, and the same we can apply in our business in blockchain, and we can say it's a period of economic uncertainty. And rebel coders started to find ways to overcome the man in the middle and to make processes reliable, transparent, immutable, and for sure more secure. And with our panelists, what I can say, well, they are amazing because they are they are light years ahead of their time, and they will help us to get a better understanding what will come up next in our let's say in the business world. So we all are here, and we can say baseline shifting is, we are talking about trust. We will see what does this mean, creating a trustworthy solution. How do we understand, how do we define trust? Is this different to what we are used to have in the way how we build up trust in human relationship? So I also would like to discuss this with the panelists. Probably we will hear and we will learn more about that. What we can say, a new frontier of data exchange is here. So we see the enormous amount of devices which can be connected with each other. And here we go. We are generating tons, really tons of data. How do we secure them? How do we make sure that they are not abused? Who can use my data because it's my data? Why is anybody else able to use my data for his business purpose? So a lot of questions are there, and I think our panelists will really help us a lot to get a better understanding how to overcome these problems from the perspective of businesses. And what I'd like to say is when we talk about Internet of Things and sensors which will be connected, the more we are connecting these things, we need to understand what are the drivers, what is behind, what kind of business value is there, how can we generate, or how can we get that, how can we lever this business, what is inside. And for this, I think education and more knowledge is very helpful. And therefore, again, thank you so much for our panelists today to learn more about that. Just to show you the impact, what is going on in the digitalization and as well in connecting devices. You can see it is really increasing and a very, it's speeding up, it's accelerating. And we know that more and more devices are connected with each other. But again, at the same time, a lot of open questions are there. So how do we really do this in a correct way? And one thing which I'd like to mention here is we somehow, from the European perspective, lost the traction to create solutions in Web 2.0, where we started with the social media and the interaction between human beings. But right now, I'd like to say there is an open window, especially for us here in Europe, to create solutions where we can connect industries, where we can connect businesses to do something, because this is not still occupied by the big players like the Facebook, Alphabets, or Tencent and Baidu's. So we really have the moment where we can go in and do something, and that it's worth to think about this. This you can see here, that's just about the industrial Internet of Things, and these numbers that are not they are old ones, it's not the latest numbers, and there's more inside, but it is interesting, and we can really generate a lot of value out of this, also in terms of to create new jobs and new business models and so on. So I think that's really, it is worth to dive into this topic. One last thing I'd like to mention, because this is from my perspective related to what we are talking today. We are talking about platform economy, and we are talking about networks, and blockchain is related to network. So what kind of network, what kind of platform we want to use? We all know that, I'd like to say, the transaction platforms like we know Amazon, we know Uber, we know Airbnb, and we know how to use them. This is more like digital matchmaker. But what we see today with our panelists is that we talk more about innovation platforms. And here the blockchain really can help us to set free so interesting and important things, how to bring new business solution into the market, how to make things work, even without knowing each other, without having that traditional kind of trust. So that's interesting to discuss. This is what we want to do. And for this, I'd like to hand over to our panelists. And I just see right now, Markus, where are you? I would like to hand it over to you so that you will start with your introduction about what Weeve is doing. And I'm very excited to hear and to learn more about it.
Of course, thank you. Audio is okay?
Audio is okay, but first I have to stop it. So now you can share.
Okay. Great, thank you so much. Great to be here. This is my tribe, I feel. So I'm quite new to Berlin, fairly new compared to many in the blockchain space, let's say 3 years of experience. But when I came, I really found this technology is amazing. And that's what I'm here for. So I feel really fortunate to work in this area and to work at the intersection of blockchain and IoT and AI, so these 3 technologies. So at Weeve, we're sitting in Berlin at Tiergarten. So I'll show you what's distracting me out the window, this beautiful, beautiful sunset in Berlin. It's a really nice view. And I'm sitting at the office of NBT, which is next big thing. So I'll just go ahead and share my screen. So I'm just going to plug very quickly next big thing, which is the venture studio sitting at Tiergarten. And this whole venture studio is established to build startups related to AI, blockchain, and IoT, or in other words, the machine economy. And this is my call to action. If you are interested in these topics, if you want to found a startup, if you just want to discuss how to get involved in these topics and how to build companies and shape the future, then I would really encourage you to reach out to me or to Next Big Thing, and we can talk about it. So I'll jump now into Weeve. Weeve is a portfolio company within Next Big Thing. So go ahead and share my slides. So Weeve is a startup, as I mentioned, a portfolio company of Next Big Thing. And I wanted to talk about how I think that the machine economy is really one of the killer apps for blockchain. So blockchain, I found it's an amazing technology in and of itself. And it found like sometimes it seems like it's a technology looking for a problem. And this is the problem that I see I'm most excited about. So what is the machine economy? This is coming from some NBT blog posts, which I've referenced below. But what we think the machine economy is the following three technologies combining together. So we all know Internet of Things, exponential growth, billions and billions of devices coming online, massive amounts of data coming available at your fingertips, AI, machine learning, also exponential growth, amazing new, it's a superpower in the computing world that we can make really accurate predictions. We can make models that can classify images and videos, drive cars. And then finally, distributed ledger technology, which is also one of these technologies that has this exponential growth curve. So what happens when all of these technologies are growing at the same time, and what's the convergence look like? It's just amazing from a philosophical perspective to think where are we going to be in 10 years. So the other aspect, coming back to the machine economy, is this concept of the amount of data coming into the machine economy. So the machine economy is really autonomous machines that are transacting with themselves. So they rely on data, and this enables completely new disruptive business models. And that's where we get to exactly this track, which is the application of some of these new business models. And that's my thesis, is that blockchain enables the machine economy, and the machine economy is a killer app for the blockchain. So just some basic bullet points. So IoT is distributed, and it can just obviously benefit from having this distributed infrastructure. It's distributed geographically, it's distributed in terms of user access and industries and decentralization. I mean, they both fit together. Another aspect is that blockchain is built with security and access control in mind. So that's just the default, is that you have your wallet, that's your identity, and therefore the transactions are secure. It's all based on cryptography. So because this is one of the biggest challenges in IoT, this is one of the solutions to use blockchain. And then automation. So the machine economy requires some level of autonomy, some agency. So I'm picturing machines that are able to negotiate with themselves, to transact between themselves, to provide some service. And it could be that they negotiate with themselves to distribute a fleet of autonomous driving cars in a city, and they might have to bid against each other. So this is coming, I think, and this requires some level of autonomy, some algorithm, and guess what that is? That's a smart contract in the blockchain. And finally, the word economy is very important in the machine economy, and that's where blockchain was built with financial transactions in mind. It was built to disrupt the financial industry. So this is why I think they fit together so well, and they can feed off each other. So I want to talk about a particular application. So we are a startup based in Berlin. We've been around for 2 or 3 years. I'm only 1 year here at Weeve as CTO. We started with a focus on the security, so the first mile of the data economy, of the machine economy, which is securing the data and getting it into the blockchain. And now I'll talk about one application. So once you have this data, once you have this ability to put data into the blockchain, what can you do with it? So this is an application for IoT, which is pay-per-use. So a lot of new exciting businesses are something as a service. So Uber is a ride sharing as a service. Airbnb is, you can consider that hotel rooms as a service, machine as a service, pay-per-use. So in this case, we'll talk about drive units. So we had one client that was interested to store the number of revolutions of a servo motor into the blockchain, and therefore the client would pay per rotation, essentially. So this is the architecture we have in mind. So we have a new type of edge computing, which is not based on, typically edge computing in the IoT world is where the data leaves your premise and then goes into the cloud. But actually that's not really the interesting edge anymore. It's more about, because we have these things called hybrid cloud architectures where your on-prem is part of your data is stored on-prem, but part of it is also stored in the cloud. So hybrid cloud, you could even be using a provider like AWS. So that's really not the issue anymore. It's more about that decision where you decide that your data is going to leave your control. It doesn't matter if it's in your premise or on the cloud, it's going to leave your control. You're going to give access to a third party to your data. And the interesting thing about data is that, of course, it's once you've let it escape your premise, it's gone forever, right? So once I'm able to download a movie, I'm able to copy that and sell that to anybody, right? So that data is no longer, as soon as I have that data, I own it essentially, right? So I have the same level of control that you as an originator would have. So what we'd like to talk about is an edge compute platform, the Weeve server, which sits in the data custody zone. So this is the new edge, so behind that edge. And in this case, it's an orchestrated server, an edge server. So it can be managed by some external agent. And that could be the factory owner, or it could be a trusted third party that's able to configure that server. And in this case, the Weeve server is enabled with 3 modules. So it's a modular architecture to enable this service, which is pay-per-use. So it's going to parse the data, filter the data, and finally write a transaction into the blockchain. And then this is not just slideware. We actually implemented this for one client where the servo motor is connected to the blockchain and it's writing the number of rotations into the Ethereum blockchain. And the final solution is that every machine has a digital twin. We then have a token balance for each machine and each customer. And that token balance is then resolved at some payment period so that the customer can finally pay the invoice, and then the machine supplier can generate revenue. So we're talking the classic CapEx to OpEx application. And this is all enabled by blockchain and IoT. So that's the application. This is one of many applications that we're exploring. I just wanted to present this as one of the most exciting ones and one of the most advanced ones. And I think I'll wrap it up with, again, really happy to talk about IoT, blockchain, AI at Weeve, and also at Next Big Thing. And that's it from my side. So happy to take some questions, and I'll pass it back to you, Katarina.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Markus, for the first insights. And I would just like to ask you, so what do you think, what are the main barriers to adoption of blockchain? What is hindering us?
So blockchain in particular is a very broad technology that can be applied to many areas. So one of the most interesting things, again, back to the thesis that the machine economy is a killer app for blockchain. The interesting thing I noticed, and this is my personal opinion, is that, I often was speaking in conferences and I would ask the audience, so when is the last time you personally have used the blockchain? When have you interacted with one of these decentralized applications? And even in a very tech savvy world, very, very few people have actually used the blockchain. And this is, for me, surprising because, that was part of the promise, the vision, like we would just transform the world. So what I'm getting to is one of the biggest barriers for me is the UX and the UI. So just the cognitive load that you need to have to understand, okay, what's a wallet? How do I secure it? What's a token? What's a token address? So I've lived through this working on an actual project, and the number of steps that you even need to do to get onboarded into the DApp ecosystem, very challenging. And this is why I think the machine economy is the killer app, is because machines don't care about that. It's all automated steps. So for a person for me to get a DApp on my phone, you know, this is like 30 steps I need to do literally to convert from fiat into token, but a machine doesn't care about that. It's 30 steps. That's a shell script I can execute in 1 second, and it's done. It's onboarded. It has a wallet, an ID, and this thing is now connected and using the blockchain. So that's one of the barriers, and that's one of the solutions.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the first question I could ask you. There are a lot of more questions which are here, at least on my table, but I guess also the audience will have a lot of questions. But before we dive into more questions, I would like to hand it over to Stephan. And Stephan, I think you are also able to show us your insights, to show us more about your understanding. And yeah, I'm very excited to learn and to hear what you would like to share with us. The stage is yours.
Okay, let me just unmute. Wonderful. Thank you very much, and thanks for having us. I'd like to also, use a couple of slides to basically explain what we do, what Ubirch stands for, and why we think blockchain can be used in combination with IoT a lot more, and are already working on a couple of things. Just a second ago, I received information that today more than 4,000 corona tests have been anchored in the blockchain through us. So this is a very concrete example, although I will not touch that in my presentation, but it's happening right now. That's what I want to say. But let me try to share my screen. All right. Yeah, so our mission is to build trust for the Internet of Things by using blockchain and some crypto technology. And let me just explain to you, what that means, how we do it, and what it means in concrete terms. A few words on Ubirch. We are also one of the Berlin-based blockchain companies with a strong focus on IoT. I would more even, say we are an IoT and a cybersec company than a blockchain company, but we're strong, users of blockchain technology. We received a couple of awards already for what we do, and I'm basing the presentation on a pitch win, at Prosegur just 10 days ago, so that you can also see, what creates, resonance in clients at the moment with regards to what we do. But first, I want to reference back, to what Katarina said, and also the previous speaker. So, what is our belief? Why are we doing this? Why we find it so fascinating? And it is the digitalization. So, what we see at the moment is what I tend to call the second wave of internet. So the internet comes to the things, to the real world, to real assets. And that means, that in this picture you see how a physical asset it gets transformed into a digital asset by applying internet, obviously, and sensors. And the thing that fascinates me so much about that is that it is not, standing for its own, because that creates a dynamic that is unstoppable, and it means that the business typically, goes on the digital side too. It follows the sensor and the data, if you like, and that's why we are talking about a machine as a service, predictive maintenance, and all these kinds of digital business models. I personally believe that any not digital business model will go down that route, and that we have to be prepared for a fully digitalized, business world, which relies on data, obviously, because this whole digital sphere is built out of data, out of sensor and data streams, and that's why it's so dangerous, right? Because if a hacker, takes this over, then our world will be broken. That's why cybersecurity and securing these data events is so important. You can also put it in a picture, so everyone is talking about billions of sensors, which definitely will be there or are already there, in our private apartments, in public spaces, everywhere. And the big question is, can you trust the sensors? Can you trust data that comes from the sensors into your business applications? And we would say no. In most cases, IoT sensors are not secure, and it's difficult to trust them. Or if you want to see it, in a more architectural kind of perspective, on right-hand side, you see a secured classic deployment. CCTV cameras in that case, IPsec connected, secure tunnels and so on. And now this vast, cloud of new IoT devices and sensors is on the rise. And the question is, how can those get secured too? How can we get trustworthy and authentic data from these devices? And one of the answers is, for sure, it doesn't work with the old technologies. So securing them by establishing a secure channel to a drone, a door sensor, whatever, will not work. It just does not scale. So we need new technological approaches to secure IoT devices. And the other thing that we see, we also have a colleague sitting in Tel Aviv, every day reporting exciting new stuff to us, but also hacker news. So there is a big, something that is called the new frontier is data hacking. Not taking over the full infrastructure of a factory, just identify data streams that flow into the factory or into a water treatment plant, for example. And you just modify maybe only one single package of data that flows into that water treatment plant, and suddenly the water turns toxic. By the way, that's not theory, that happened in real life. In Syria, 2 years ago, a water plant has been hacked like that. So this is a hacking pattern on the rise, and it tells, why data security is so much, at stake, and why these data-driven business models will fly or not, depending on the question whether we can secure data from IoT devices or not. And now the question is, what does Ubirch do about that? So our system works like that. You have what we call a nano client. It's a very small, in the kilobytes, a client that can run on sensors, on very small IoT devices, even on batteries. We have one client that has sensors that women can wear in their bodies, overnight on batteries, obviously, and which runs our protocol. So it is really extremely efficient. And can still do some basic, you could say, blockchain operations or crypto operations. So it's basically creating microcertificates from every single data point. So whenever something happens on that sensor, measurement of temperature, door open, close, whatever, a certificate is being created, chained together. And then we use Merkle trees in the cloud to store that in multiple public blockchains in the same time. So what we do, as we all have blockchain experts in this call, we create immutable locks from tiniest sensors, and then we offer a verification API, where everyone who receives such a data packet can say, I don't trust this temperature reading, or I have to trust it very much, because I'm an insurance and I have to pay $1 million for a broken cool chain. So I want to check, whether the data actually comes from that sensor, hasn't been touched, is in the right order. And that's all what you can do, through that API, and check, whether the data actually is authentic. And as I said, we presented that 10 days ago to Prosegur in an international pitch, and we did win the pitch. By saying, what can a company, the digitalization happens to Prosegur too, right? They are an analog company, but they will have to act in the digital sphere. So they have to control these devices, because as a client, as a security searching client, you want your smart lock or your Windows sensor or your whatever under their umbrella. You want them to manage these devices, but they cannot establish a secure connection to the sensor in your body. They need different ways, to do that. and we presented our solution, and it resonated quite well. We actually showed this as my last slide, oh no, one more, but a smart lock, the Nuki device in that case, where our nano client runs on the lock. Whenever doors open, closed, it creates such a micro certificate, and wherever in the world you are sitting, you can query the micro certificate against the blockchain and check whether the door was open or not. The last fascinating thing I want to show, this comes also on a SIM card, because we thought, machine economy and blockchain in things is great, but it's difficult. If we're talking about things, we're talking about many things. Millions of devices. So you don't want to have crypto engineers, to flash all these devices. It's ridiculous. On the other hand, blockchain is a crypto protocol, so you have to bring cryptos in some means, to the devices. And what we did, we partnered with G&D, Giesecke and Devrient, second largest SIM card manufacturer in the world, and they put it on their IoT SIM cards. So you just plug in such a SIM card into whatever IoT business you have, and then it's part of the blockchain. That's basically our promise. And if someone is interested, you can order a test kit. Sorry, this is not a sales event, but it's even for free, so it's not sales. To test this out, because it's really fascinating, to see a blockchain client operating on the SIM card and interfacing with it. It's really cool. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stephan, too. That's amazing, and it's interesting that you are really so enthusiastic about what you are doing. And I have one question, but before I ask you one question, I would like to tell the audience. I see that there are questions. F&A will come a bit later. I'll pick up your questions after we then move on to the panel. But first of all, I would like to stop or to hear all our panelists with their presentation, and then when we then move on, I will pick up the question from the audience to ask this and towards our panelists. So therefore, one question before we then move on to Carsten. Stephan, do you think that the awareness of data protection, data security is high enough in terms of that the business, that the CEOs of the world really understand the utmost importance to secure the data when not staying analog, going more and more into digitalization businesses?
Well, it's a good question, and unfortunately it depends very much on which country you're in, right? So if you're in the US or we're just starting business in Dubai and so on, the whole topic is discussed in a different way. In Germany, we tend to be a little bit, like third priority about that. In the last phase of the project, someone says, has someone thought about securing it, and then you try to do something. So Germany is not so good at it, I would say. In other countries, it has a different attention. Or Israel, Israel is built around the idea of having security in mind. I mean, for a bad reason also, but they have a totally different perception of that. But I think it will turn into that also in Germany, because if you think you're an insurance company and your systems turn, with smart contract into systems that transfer money automatically to clients, and claims come in as readings from IoT sensors. From that point on, you will take security very serious. Otherwise you just won't sleep overnight. And we're on the brink. This will happen in the next 5 years or so. It's not something we're in a big parametric insurance project at the moment, which is close to rollout. So this is not from textbooks or so. But the big businesses will turn into more data driven soon, and then security will be their first priority. You can be sure.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that insight. And now I would like to hand it over to Carsten. Carsten, please be so kind and share your insights, what you're working on, and what your projects are.
Yeah, thank you, Katarina. Let me just share my screen 1 second. And then we kick off. Yeah, at Spherity. So we are doing digital identity solutions, and the name Spherity is basically inspired by the World Economic Forum, because World Economic Forum is defining the fourth industrial revolution as fusion of technologies, similar what colleagues from Ubirch explained, fusion of technologies with bridging the physical spheres, object machines, biological spheres, humans and organization, and the digital spheres with digital assets, digital agents, digital something. And so our focus is clearly on identity here. Let me just close this window. So, and all the time the question is this fake or real? Yeah. And what is the provenance? Yeah. Can I trust my supplier? This is clearly about enterprise identity. Does my supplier has proofs that he's not engaging in child labor, that's considering labor rights, that they do environment health and they're compliant with environment health and safety standards, and that they don't have anti-bribery issues. Yeah, so we clearly have to know this about our suppliers, and this all comes back to provenance and to credentials, authenticity, because if I cannot decide this, I cannot make a decision whether it's fake or real. And this gets even more important because what Gartner is saying, and they said it already 4 years ago, is that our value chains are now dynamically defined cyber physical value chains. And this means I just connect an IoT device with a design pattern, go to 3D printer, print something, get a spare part, plug it in somewhere, and with a supplier I've never met before. And when this is the case, I cannot rely on 20-year-long-old relationships between suppliers and customers. I have to be able to verify the credibility, the trustworthiness of my enterprise counterparties, but also of every machine, every IoT sensor, because I have no clue is it a fake BMW or real BMW that's feeding a dangerous driving algorithm, and as insurance company, dangerous driving backend or driver assistance system that's consuming machine learning labels. I need to do a scoring. Can I trust the algorithm, and can I trust the car, or has a hacker manipulated this? And this is all about data provenance or provenance of so-called cyber physical objects. And cyber physical objects are the combination of a physical object and a digital twin or digital identity of the object. And that's very important, especially in dynamically defined cyber physical value chains where Alice, Bob, and Charlie have never met before, but they would like to engage in business. And I think it's a very simple understanding here, because right now, so we have the internet, we have a lot of issues in Corona. Companies are kind of, let's say, victim to hackers. And then we have the counterfeiting mafia that's doing fake products, all this kind of stuff, and fake machines data selling to, or fake carbon credit certificates selling to the voluntary carbon credit market. So we have all these issues. And then on the other hand, we have more policies. We have to enforce the policies, but if you don't have technology, it's not working. As a company, I have to deal with terabyte of data, but today as a company, I get all this data flooded with all the data. I have no instruments to verify the authenticity of the data. This means I cannot trust it, which means we are at the brink from a very, very simple transformation of the internet. A lot of stuff in the internet is being encrypted, and now we transform it to internet where the data are encrypted and signed. So because only if they're signed, I know they're authentic. Only if I know something about the counterparty, I can verify the trustworthiness. I can do a scoring model. And when I trust the counterparty, whether enterprise or machine, I can trust the data based on the scoring model, and then I can use them and engage in business. So I think that's a very important finding. So we're at the brink of kind of transforming the internet from encrypted internet to encrypted and signed internet. And if we do this, then it's pretty kind of a lot of good use cases. So we have enterprise identity for real-time enterprise onboarding and customer supplier relationships, or even if we talk about simple master data that are the top of a letter, it's kind of company address and bank account data. So there's a lot of social engineering going on, kind of to screw around with bank account data. So which means money is being transferred to the wrong account. And this is all about enterprise identity master data to secure this and to secure some credentials about the company. This is very important for supply chain. In addition, object identity. So at Spherity, we do a lot of stuff with simple objects like shipments and all pharmaceutical products. but in the end also for machines. So with Dena in Berlin, we're doing a project where machine gets an identity, machine gets provenance about the smart meter, about how the smart meter was deployed, what's behind the smart meter, and that are the fundamental requirements before I can trust all the IoT data coming out of the machine. And last but not least, it's a lot about process auditability in regulated industries. And so that's not only about technology, so plugging a piece of technology in an IoT device, it's also about two other things: identity supply chains, because I have to have the frameworks, the interoperable protocols, so that I know this machine belongs to Bosch, and there's an original Siemens part in the machine, or it's an original BMW, and it's a fake BMW. So all the machines might have certificates, and it's linked to key management, because we're talking about public key cryptography. Because then it's kind of linked to public-private key pairs. Something is signing something. Again, we transform internet to an internet where everything is signed. So I have to have these instruments: trust hierarchy, identity verification provider, root of trust linked to governance registries, then the protocols for doing electronic signatures, verifiable credentials. We talked a bit about digital twins, and inside the digital twins, you can store micro certificates. And when I have a machine, I can request all the micro certificates about the machine over the life cycle. The machine itself decides which micro certificates to share, the TÜV certificate, the OEM birth certificate, whatever it is. I can do a scoring. I can decide if I trust the machine or not, and then I can basically use the data, engage in business, or whatever it is. So it's really about an identity supply chain. It's not, let's say, a quick technology fix with a kind of more or less complex blockchain around it. It's kind of to think about an identity supply chain perspective to solve this in an entire ecosystem. The other topic is you can go to the individual machines, but we have a shitload of brownfield. We have large industrial infrastructures, IoT bases deployed. And for that reason, we also have to think about retrofitting, how to enable existing brownfield infrastructure to engage with it, because we cannot go to every machine and plug a blockchain client into this. And that's a kind of question in terms of driving adoption that needs to be answered. So we use a couple of frameworks. One is W3C, verifiable credential. An issuer, let's say the TÜV, is issuing a certificate about a machine. It's, let's say, a Siemens machine, and the TÜV has kind of checked it, issuing a certificate, which means when a certificate is being issued for the identifier of the machine, it's stored in the wallet of the machine, can be in the cloud, can be with the edge. And when there's a verifier, another machine that wants to know can I trust the TÜV certified machine, they can request the TÜV certificate, verify it, and then trust it. What's important? So we basically believe in not storing all the data on a chain, even not anchoring all the data. So doing it fully off-chain with verifiable credentials, with signed data sets. And if you do it, you don't need to do much on the blockchain. You only need to put a couple of identifiers on the blockchain, maybe some schemas, or maybe some revocation registries. But what's also important, so if the identifier is on the blockchain, if you think about it, do we really need a blockchain? Because when you think about blockchain is doing a global ranking of and ordering of all blockchain transactions to avoid the double spend. You don't need this for identity. So we think blockchain is a bridging technology right now, kind of to establish decentralized identity, but in the midterm, it can fully go away. Of course, it can stay. You can still anchor identifiers on a blockchain, but we believe there are protocols that are emerging right now that don't need the blockchain, with less costs, much better privacy features, and much better scalability features. So which means kind of there's still a further evolution going on, and especially when we talk about identity. There's a lot of standards. It's all about standards. It's all about standards, because only if the standards are in place, then people can basically apply them, and then the network of network comes. And in Berlin, we have, of course, a DIF Foundation as the driver of these decentralized identity standards, which is very important. Unfortunately, I think you mentioned this, your customers are not in Germany. Our primary customers, with the exception of one, are in Switzerland, in the US. I think Germany is very slow in adoption. Germans kind of tend to write a lot of patents still, and tend to kind of write a lot of government-funded research proposals. And right now, there's this digital Schaufenster digital identity. So the entire market has completely collapsed to zero, at least for startups, because all the corporates are now writing BMWI tenders, which is a little bit sad. it's kind of not driving quick adoption as it's being seen in other countries. It's worth to say, if I have the kind of agreed standards, I have an identity meta platform, which means when we have Alice and Bob on Facebook, Bosch IoT Cloud, SAP Leonardo, they all need to adopt a set of standards, and they can start establishing trust. And that's super important because this is driving network of networks effects, and that's driving a huge economic justification for using decentralized identity and verifiable credentials kind of to establish trust among players who have never met before, especially driving what Gartner is saying, dynamically defined value chains to enable it. Now I would like to provide a couple of examples. I would like to kind of to start a bit with enterprise identity, because everything is rooted in enterprise identity, because when we talk about machines, then an enterprise have to do assertions, credentials about a machine. A machine is owned by an enterprise or authorized by an enterprise. So it's kind of important to start there, and then I go into more examples. And so supplier validation, responsible sourcing, third-party risk management. The basic idea is that my suppliers who have certificates, anti-bribery, child labor, labor rights, environment, health and safety certificates, and master data. So if they are credentialized, then I'm onboarded with pharma company number 1, and I have the credentials approved. I can reuse the same credentials to be immediately onboarded with pharma company 2, and that's reducing the onboarding process quite a bit. And that's what being kind of driven in the pharma industry. And in Germany, a couple of companies, Bosch, Siemens, Daimler, so they're looking in master data, putting them in credentials to secure them, drive the onboarding, and also if there are changes in them, that they can easily being kind of communicated to the other companies that are relying on this. It's important in these kind of things that if you work with kind of, let's say, the wallet, now we're talking about identity wallets, that you find ways to integrate them with existing legacy infrastructures. So in this case, it's ERP for third-party risk management, and that's all the security and compliance instruments in place to connect to a wallet with your ERP infrastructure, and if you anchor a few data on a blockchain. But the business case again is, so this is Alice, company number 1, Bob is then the other company. Both of them can start exchanging their credentials in a very efficient way, establish trust, because we're using open protocols.
Carsten, may I ask you to speed up a little bit, because it's so interesting, and we all like to hear more about you. But I think the exchange of ideas in the panel, on the panel, that is something I think we would like to involve the audience to ask questions rather than to listen to all these interesting use cases. Please, would you be so kind to speed up a little bit?
No, I'm almost done, because this is kind of, let's say, another example where machines get an identity, where the idea is I have a batch of a manufactured product, and then with the batch, the digital twin is kind of trailing along a supply chain, gathering all the certificates, supplier certificates, quality control, some other certificates. Then it's a trusted release, and you have the full audit trail. And I think that's also important, because we not necessarily need all the fancy kind of, let's say, supervisionary use cases can be also applied to existing supply chains in regulated industries, and already deliver a business case, and a trusted release is a very, very nice business case. Last but not least, can also be applied to cars and algorithms. So I have a car with an identity, I can verify it's original BMW. I have an IoT data stream connected to machine learning algorithm, and then the machine learning algorithm is providing machine learning output labels. And if I would like to consume them as an autonomous driving backend or as an insurer, I can or mapping service such as here, I can get all the labels, the data labels with the provenance where they're coming from. So that they came from an algorithm I trust, a car I trust, which means kind of also blending identity with IoT, cars and algorithm. That's a bit what we do. And at DHS, because you mentioned this, so we are basically providing this technology, retrofitting existing legacy infrastructures to provide a digital identity to shipments, also for verifiability and the customs side, so that the inbound customs has better, let's say, data for analytics, and does the picks the right packages that might be malicious. And this is a nice business case there, and that's what we basically do at Spherity. And was a quick overview. Katarina.
so much for running through your last slides, and I'm sure you can tell us so much, and it's really very interesting to listen to that. But before we really move on and you know, sit somehow down on the panel and ask and go through the questions, let me just ask you one question. You mentioned, and that worried me a lot, that we, and also Stephan, he said that we are a bit behind here in Germany. So what do you think? How can we create a better awareness? I think here at the panel and also the audience, we are aware of that technology is so important, because now we are transfer more and more into digitalization. But how can we create a better awareness? What would you suggest?
From my perspective, it's a mindset problem, because people are aware. They have a lot of people in technology scouting, R&D, and write the patents. But if there's not a crystal clear business case, no one is doing anything. And I think there's also, let's say, the unknown in terms of the economic value. And that's the mindset problem in Germany, because if there's, say, uncertainty in the economic value, no one is investing. And this is from a mindset perspective and from a risk appetite, corporate entrepreneurship perspective, it's entirely different in other countries. And I think it's not an awareness problem, it's a mindset problem to invest in the technology, which is an ecosystem technology, and where the business case for individual companies are not quite clear yet. Yeah, and I think that's the biggest change from my perspective.
Okay, so we see what we can do to shift a little bit, the mindset, and let's start with some questions. And I've seen here a question from Abdul. He was asking, can these IoT devices, for example, motor, in your case, be compromised to send false data? How will that be detected in a blockchain setting? And I think that question was done or was written when you held your talk. Probably, Markus, you would like to answer first, and then maybe Stephan and Carsten would also like to say something on that.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a common theme, this topic of security in blockchain. I think Stephan will be able to comment even more in depth. From our perspective at Weeve, we started actually as a security company for this topic, which is the concept is to oracleize something into the blockchain. So once it's in the blockchain, great, it's immutable, you can see the history of transactions on that, and it's secure. But the real problem is getting it into the blockchain. So anytime you write something into the blockchain, that's the weak link. There are a lot of technologies. So one of the technologies that we developed at Weeve is to run a process in one of the cores of a CPU, which is acting as a guard process. So it's a physical way to guarantee the execution of something. There are so many ways to enhance the security from a physical side, from a computational side. It's the right question. There are a lot of different answers out there, and I'll pass it on to Stephan and others.
Okay, then Stephan, please be so kind, pick up and give us a little bit of your thoughts, because I think it's really a very interesting question.
Yeah, it's a good question, because I can tell, that every second client meeting, when we start, discussions with the client, you can be prepared, this question comes at a certain point, and it's a fair thing, because it definitely is an issue. But what we typically say, it's not our issue, so we should be clear, about what blockchain and the technology like ours can do and what we can't do. So if someone pulls the plug out of the server, blockchain won't help, right? For this, fraudulent actions in front of the sensor, if you like, there are digital technologies, so I would typically say, hire a data analyst and put in some fraud detection algorithms, use more than one sensor, for a case, and suddenly it will be extremely difficult, to do it, right? If you think of a cool chain and you measure temperature in 3 different locations with 3 sensors and have a fraud detection algorithm on top of it, you're done. It will be very hard, to trick around that sensor. But it's not a blockchain thing, and I think that's also, for maturing what we are doing, and getting more into a production stage. it is important, to name the fences, if you like, So what can we do seriously in different shapes, and what is beyond the scope of blockchain and surrounded technologies? In this case, I would say it is beyond.
Okay, thank you. Carsten, would you like to add something on that?
Yeah, so we have a bit, so I think you can do a bottom-up approach, like securing a device and doing kind of stuff, or let's say a more top-down approach, yeah. And so we are doing more kind of top-down. Basically, we assume a subsystem is validated and we can trust it, and we provide identity to a subsystem. And if you, especially in regulated industries, there are a lot of validated systems or subsystems. So this is where we start, or let's say in the energy sector, it's even some systems that are gorged or geeicht by the physical technical agency in Germany. And if there's a lot of validation and other auditing going on, you can kind of assume you can trust a subsystem. And that's interesting, because if you trust a subsystem, you can basically retrofit the entire subsystem, all the entities, all the smart meters, all the objects that are coming out of the system. And then you can start on this level, which means we basically cut out a bit of all the details going down to the sensor, and then someone hacks the sensor or the telematic device or does something else. It's that's the approach we are doing. And so more on the brownfield side, so we have systems that are validated, so we provide identity, we revalidate them, and then we trust the entire system that's providing data. And that's about a bit what we are doing. And in a lot of discussions, it's always driven by a cyberpunk, greenfield, maximalist approach, like have to go down to the last sensor. But if you do it, it's fine. And it could be done by technology. A lot of stuff could be done by technology, but then it's difficult to drive adoption, because then you have to do it for all the sensors. Yeah, and a lot of stuff in the field. And that's why we kind of more look on the brownfield side into validated subsystems. We give them identity, revalidate them, and then we can trust them, because it's state of the art in the industry. If they're revalidated, we can trust them. That's a bit our approach.
That's a good term you used several times. It's trust. And talking about blockchain, I first of all, thank you so much for the answers, and I hope, Abdul, you're fine, so you get an understanding that not all and everything can be done via a blockchain. So we have to understand, and this is what I stand for, know your process, right? If you have an understanding of your process, then you see which processes work to really be backed up by a blockchain solution. And this is also something we've heard from our panelists today. Not every process must be secured by a blockchain. So there's much more, and we have to look at. And again, not all can be covered by a blockchain. But what we heard, and a lot of time when we were all introduced to the blockchain community and to what is going on there was the term trust. And first of all, I would like to ask my panelists here, how do you define trust in your use case or in your understanding? And Markus, again, I'd like to start with you. How do you define trust?
So for us, it's about this first mile of the machine economy, which is coming to the sensors. So for us, once that data is written into the blockchain, we can say that it's trusted. But anything that's outside needs this extra attestation, is the word we like to use. We have to attest that this has been properly written and not fraudulent. And then the devil is in the details regarding how that's written, how it's been secured. And there are just so many technologies and ways that you can secure. That's this coming back to the first question. It's definitely the right question.
It's definitely, it's what makes us crazy, and we have to find the answer. Yeah, and Stephan, I also would like to ask you, and not only from the perspective of running a startup and having such nice, brilliant ideas connected also to cybersecurity, I would like to connect your definition of trust more towards human being. What do you see a difference in trust between machines, machine to machine, versus machine to human being and human being to human being? Is there a difference in, and do we need to learn more as human beings who we are going to use devices?
I wouldn't see such a big difference, in whether it's machine to machine or machine to human. It's rather the question, we are in a sense, we're uploading our lives to the digital sphere. By the way, Corona has speeded this up a lot in the last months. And for me, this is a fascinating thing, and I like it. But it's also a little bit scary, and a couple of things are in danger of getting lost on the way. And one of the things is, trust. So it's a very, very old concept. I guess, it started with human beings, that they figured out whom you can trust and how you figure out trust and how you verify it and so on. And now, we're putting it all in the cloud, and how we start business, how we trust, incoming things, think of an insurance agent, for example, whether he thinks this is a real damage, I have to transfer money or not. In the past, this was done in a very, tangible, physical way, so they knew the persons. He came into the office and reported the damage, for example, or maybe the guy drove out and visited the AIDA on site. And now he sits in a data room, right? Or maybe he's not even sitting there. Maybe it's an algorithm and he just programmed it. But it still drives our society, right? It's still money transfer, it's economy, it's our our wealth that is created through that. So for me, it's an absolutely fascinating topic, and blockchain is the promise, that we can organize trust in a fully digitized, pretty much automated manner. I love it. I definitely think blockchain can solve a super critical part of it, but it's a big thing, yeah.
And thank you so much for your insight. Yeah, I do feel as well that this is really a big thing, and we probably should look a bit more into. I would like to now refer to the question of Chris. He said, which industry are the most likely to be early adopters? Not just in terms of big efficiency, but also wondering if heavy regulations are a benefit driver here for a change. So like data privacy, supply chain tracking, and so on. So let me start with Carsten. What do you think? Which are the early adopters? Which industry is a typical representative of being an early adopter?
From my perspective right now, it's, let's say, pharma and life sciences, because we work with credentials and look more on audit trails and regulations, and they're heavily regulated. I think these industries have the financial firing power and the intellectual capability to work, because they're very educated. Pharma people are very, very educated, and the big pharma have a lot of financial resources to spend. And I think they understand the value, the business case, and have the ability to execute. And that's a bit where we see adoption. But of course, in other supply chain logistics, there's also a bit adoption. Who knows? But from our perspective, it's, let's say, more pharma and life sciences. Yeah.
Okay. Markus, what do you see? You have so much experience in your work life. So what is your opinion? Who are the early adopters? Which industry is the early adopter?
I wish I knew the real answer, because then I would pivot into that industry. So we do see, I love the comment about pharma. We also see some traction there in some of the portfolio companies. So the ones that we are particularly excited about are industrial automation, supply chain logistics, and mobility. These are the three that we're currently, let's say, we see the first signs of interest, at least looking back.
Okay, and last but not least, Stephan, what is your opinion? What do you feel? Which industry will pick it up first and bring this to life?
I mean, there's a big change here, which I can report also through Corona. Clearly, the whole healthcare sector is on spot and sees lots of changes, lots of digital adoptions, which were taking ages before, and before, I mean 3 months ago or 6 months ago. And we think it will stay, we think we will see telehealth, remote diagnostics, remote surgery, all these kind of things that were in minds and in some projects, but developing very slow. So we think the healthcare sector will, even if it sounds a little bit weird, but will benefit a lot and will stay on the forefront of digitalization. we see the industrial side a little bit suffering, you know, because just as industry players, they have been hit through the COVID crisis a lot. So we see budgets cut and innovation teams fired or on short-time work and these kind of things. And an interesting thing that hasn't been mentioned by the other colleagues is the energy sector, you know. So the energy sector is under pressure of, you know, implementing complete new ways of energy management and prosumers and, you know, all this. It's organized in a complete new way, you know, how energy has been traded, produced and consumed through electric cars, for example. And we see some interesting adoption there. Besides what the other what the colleagues mentioned, you know, are I would second, but that's what I would add on top of it.
Okay, and Stephan, please allow me, because I've checked your website and I've seen that you also offered a solution for the tracking certificate, COVID-19 certificate. Please, I'm very much interested in. So how is your app differentiated by what the Corona app of the German government, what they are offering versus what is your solution about? What is the difference?
Well, we first of all, you know, we installed our software in labs. Basically, it's a technology, you know. So we see a lab, a PCR testing machine, as an industrial IoT device, if you like. And the Corona test result is a super interesting piece of data, right? At the moment, there are many borders you can cross only if you show a valid Corona test result. So we thought that's an interesting playground, you know, to offer something, and it actually worked. And it basically works like, you know, you show up a Corona test in a digital form, so it can be in your wallet. You know, I think I even have one here. Okay, I have this.
It's right now not visible.
Yeah, I know, but okay. So it's in my wallet, and it's a QR code. And what the verification person, you know, at the entrance of an airport, for example, does, they check it against the blockchain, because it's in fact linking back to a micro certificate in a blockchain that the lab has created before, at the moment when the test came out of the machine, in a very privacy-friendly way. It's an anonymous certificate, by the way, so only the tested person can link these assets. But at that, and then, you know, the check is pretty strong, you know, because when the screen turns green, it says, yes, we found a micro certificate, which says exactly that test result. It's your name, your birth date, and the lab ID are correct. So it's a very nice digital proof, you know, that you actually have this result in your pocket, and it refers to a real lab.
So that is what, you know, we talked a lot today about so many solutions, about so many business fields we should go in. And what is also visible here on this panel is that we talk a lot of in terms of technology. I'd like to ask the panelists, would you agree that we create a kind of a shift more towards a storytelling part, instead of always being focused on what the technology can bring, what the technology can offer, for what kind of solutions? Or do you think we really have to stick to the perspective of the technology and not more to the benefits out of that technology? What is your opinion? Let me start again with Carsten.
So how do we do business development? So we look for people who understand the technology, because as a small startup, we don't have the resource to educate them. So we look for people who already have a business case, yeah? Because when we start developing a business case with them, then it's very expensive. It's very expensive, the consulting effort. And then we are looking for people who already have a minimum viable ecosystem to deploy the technology, because we as a startup, we don't have financial resources to develop such an ecosystem. Here and there, you can start doing this or bootstrap something. And I really like the COVID immunization PCR credentials. That's great. But in principle, so we are looking for this. I think we as a startup, we cannot afford to change the narrative and kind of to tell everyone what the narrative is. So we really rely on people who understand technology, have a business case, have a minimum viable ecosystem, deploy our technology. So that's a bit our approach. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
Markus.
but it's important to really articulate the business value very clear and to help our counterparties to sell it. I think sometimes we enable them to tell the stories, the narrative, and to sell their business case. I think that's important.
Thank you. Markus, how do you do that? What is your idea? Would you like to create that kind of narrative, or what do you think, what approach is useful?
So it's a very relevant question for us. We're going to a customer on Friday to pitch blockchain technology. And in my experience, there's always an educational component. It's a very, very deep tech topic. So people often hear about blockchain, but don't necessarily know what it's for. And there's definitely a story element in it. My personal style is, I'm the CTO and I'm very enthusiastic about the technology. So I might not be the best person. That's why I bring along my business development lead along, and he explains it from a higher level. And then I'm ready to jump in with the architecture and the details and sort of convey the passion about what's really exciting about the technology. So I think it's also really important you have to paint a picture of a future, because it is a technology that it's not like, it's not an existing technology that you can point to and say that this has been, we're going to be, just like, you can't point to something like Airbnb, which is an established business based on an existing technology and a concept. With blockchain, you have to paint a picture, and that's definitely true to tell this story.
Stephan, also something would you like to say, narrative, or what do we need more in blockchain community?
I mean, I have two takes on that. For one, I like very much, how Carsten did put it, because it's actually, you need to some extent prepared ground, so they have to, understand and believe crypto technologies, and the other thing is they have to have a real problem, so both we can't bring and can't educate them on. On the other hand, what keeps me, I keep thinking, 15 years ago, if Jeff Bezos walked around and said, I want to, people will buy clothes online soon, or shoes, the Zalando or the, or was the, so no one believed that. So I think it's also a danger, to only try to find existing problems that we could help with. Because I think what we're talking about, a disruptive reshaping technology, right? So I also believe that it will affect areas where people feel comfortable right now and don't see any kind of problem. Just like the media industry 10 years ago, they sat there and saw these banners and these crazy American, guys who knew anything better. And they kept sitting and thought, we're fine, we're so experienced in our business, and we don't have the tiniest problem in our advertising business. And where are they now?
Right.
Yeah.
Where are they now?
And so this is quite a thing, I think we should, and because that's also a problem with European guys, that we don't know how to play the big game. And it's dangerous, to sell blockchain and not see the big picture.
Thank you. So, and seeing the big picture, and where are we now? There's another question here. What educational efforts are coming from the blockchain community to get new talents? So on the one side, we are a community, and we more or less know each other pretty well. But what are we doing to gain and to be attractive enough for new talents, for fresh ideas, for new thoughts? What are we doing in this field? And this is also something, if we are not in Europe, so I would like to say, if we're not in front,
yeah,
how can
maybe
make this more possible? Can we invite more young talents? And we have a lot of talents. How can we do that?
I think from my perspective, it's primarily driven by passion, yeah. So are the new talents inspired by the problems we are solving, sustainability problems, supply chain security problems, some e-health innovation problems? Are they inspired or not? Because I think, unfortunately, in the entire industry is pretty much scarcity. Yeah? So there's not the big salary. I think we really have to inspire people to join it and then to educate them on the job. And then what's also very interesting in this industry with all the DIDs, verifiable credentials, digital identity, IoT, blockchain, there are already a lot of startups, but there is no real market. Yeah. So which means the competition, even I think the entire space is big enough for all the companies because it's so huge and so big. But midterm and now short term, there's no market. So which means there's a shitload of competition. So which means we have focus on inspiring the people and having an impact proposition so that what they are doing when they join a blockchain company, that this really counts for the greater good of humanity because it's so competitive. So we work a lot of extra hours. Yeah. And I think when people have the passion then and the attitude kind of to really work and really want like to make a difference, then there's a shitload of learning on the job, interdisciplinary learning from consulting skills, technology skills, cryptography, business industry skills, business case skills, adoption skills, social skills, whatever it is. Yeah, that's my
the
view.
whole range must be learned. You are right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's totally interesting, and it all starts with passion. If you would like to go the extra mile and would like to deliver an impact. Yeah. If not, it's the wrong industry because right now there's pretty much scarcity. If you haven't done an ICO, then there's no scarcity. But if you're just traditional startup, you have to deal with a lot of scarcity. Yeah.
Okay, Markus, anything would you like to add? How do you attract? Because you mentioned what was this next? Sorry for
next big thing. Yeah, exactly.
Next big thing. How do you attract young people, talents to knock at your door and ask for a talk and so on? What are you doing?
Yeah, so I can sort of relate to this personally. So like I said, I'm fairly new to blockchain, like 3 years. Maybe that makes me a veteran for by some standards, but by others, fairly new. And to just go back a little bit to reiterate what Carsten has mentioned, it's really, I can draw a parallel with the data science and AI community, where there's such a huge market hype, and of course there's value, but there's a huge amount of value and hype together, caused basically every university now has a data science program, not just a class, but an entire master's degree for data science. You don't see this for blockchain. And that's just to circle back to what Carsten mentioned, is it must be in some sense market driven, which is we're still missing that final massive adoption for real use cases in blockchain. And then the second point is that NBT is very much interested in attracting blockchain talent. And it doesn't mean that you have the experience and the expertise, because as I said, you don't have this master's degree in blockchain. If you do, maybe call me and tell me about it. But for me, and for many out there, it's about the ability to learn and the passion to learn this technology. So on-the-job training, spending time after hours to do an online course is how I learned how to program Ethereum smart contracts, for example. So to attract this talent, there's a lot of initiatives at NBT. There's, that's why we joined BerChain. That's a great initiative here in Berlin, and have blog posts and meetups. That's the way to be very practical and concrete.
Okay, thank you. Sounds like that we are a very tough community, obviously. So as the way how you say, we like to work the extra mile somehow and so on. Stephan, what would you like to say? Are we that tough guys, or more like there's a little bit different perspective necessary to look at this topic and to find ways to attract new young talents?
Well, I have a couple of takes, So for one, yes, to mention BerChain is very cool, because indeed it's an educational, creating a marketplace kind of initiative, which I like very much and works very well, and is something really helps when it comes to that. The other is passion, what we see, when people apply for jobs at Ubirch, they want to work with this technology. They have a desire because they have the feeling that it's a game changer thing, and they want to be part of that. And by the way, Berlin is one of the centers in the world, for it. So it's also one of the coolest places to work for that technology. So that's for the adults, if you like, and for the kids. I think we have to advocate for STEM education, or MINT education, how it is called in Germany. So because if you look at blockchain, it's math, and I'm one of those who have suffered from their math teachers in school a lot. And if only one of them would have explained to me, what fascinating stuff can be done with math, like blockchain, like creating a proof of something, a physical action, which you can even take to court, and you are unbeatable, with that. I would have loved it, and we have to bring, more girls into the game. And make this really attractive to work on such kind of problems. Start programming, start, loving IoT devices. I don't know if you guys have seen that. That's one of my private, side activities. It's a little, like board that is used in schools, at third grade, to start programming with kids. Calliope Mini, it's a non-profit organization now. Which is bringing these boards to school. So we have to work on all kinds of levels, with the government, in our schools, with our kids, in formats like this, or when we get interviewed, because this is suffering in especially in Germany. We're not good at it, and we need much more people, especially female talents, that start falling in love with these topics and these technologies. And it doesn't happen on its own, by the way. It's if you look at statistics, female part in computer science is falling since 3 or 4 years again. It rose, to 20% or something like that, and now in many European countries it's going down again. So if we do nothing, it will be a male-dominated world, and I think you don't want to have that.
No, I don't want to have it. I can tell you, I don't like it very much, because when I started to join that community, we were like 50-50, and it was so nice and so good for me to see. And right now, I completely agree that there are two, the females are not any longer visible. Where are they?
Yeah.
And we have to change something. So now, while closing or making some, I would like to sum up our session for today, because we've covered a lot of things. So we started with the broad idea of what the IoT and blockchain, how can they go together hand in hand and create something. And Carsten, for instance, he mentioned we want to make the world a little bit better, and we want to find ways to solve problems. And you, Stephan, told us a lot about how cybersecurity, how we have to create the awareness that there is something going on. The more we go into the field of digitalization, the more we digitize our devices with each other, that they can communicate. So we need to understand that this can be hacked by people who want to harm us somehow. And here also it is important to understand what is going on, how we can solve problems. And we also have heard, Markus, thank you to you, that not all problems can be fixed via a blockchain. We have to understand that there are many things we need to define, we need to understand, and we have to, and probably this is what my term is for, we have to know our process. And the more we know about the process, what we want to do in a better way, we then can implement a very sophisticated blockchain solution. And from that understanding, first of all, I would like to say thank you to all panelists for this really exciting and awesome talk today, and also to the audience with the wonderful questions. I hope we could answer some of your questions well. And I just have to say thank you so much for joining us here. It was a great pleasure for me to be here and to learn. I learned a lot, and I just appreciate this, and I hope we can come together in one room and exchange more in terms of being in front of the camera and try to tackle these kind of discussion. We need to be open-minded, all of us, and this is what I would like to say at the end, to be open-minded, to learn and to embrace people who wants to learn to join us, that they really can bring new insights, new questions, and that we are forced, the older ones, that we are forced to explain in a very proper way. And this is, I only can say thank you to the panel, thank you for BerChain to offering that kind of opportunity that we can talk here. Thank you so much for that evening.
And thank you, Katarina, for the excellent moderation today, and also from the side of BerChain. Thanks so much to the panelists for the great insight that you provided and for contributing today. Closing with that, I also like to thank the attendees for being here today, and I'd like to remind everyone that there are 3 more sessions this week, each day at 4 o'clock CET Berlin time. So tomorrow we have a session on mobility, on Thursday we have the session on supply chain, and on Friday we have a hybrid session on public administration. So please join, and also please be part of our next events. Once again, thanks everyone, and have a great evening.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thanks everyone. It was a pleasure.